The temp tables are two types, that is a local and global variable. We are going to discuss in depth later on, like in the coming like after some time, after a few minutes. Now what is a temp table? Remember, where do we store the data? We store the data in the table, and that will be the permanent, and the table you can see on the database. The table you can see on the database here. If if I create a table here, I will be seeing that table on the database. If I need something, a table for temporary purpose. If I need something, a table for the temporary purpose. Okay. If I need some table for temporary purpose, then what I do? I'll store the data in a temp table. That concept is nothing but if you want to store the data for only for time being, for some process, and that table should not store in the database, then you will use a temp table. In order to, there are two types of temp tables. One is a local and the other is the global. For the local, the prefix for the temp table will be the pound and the table name. For the global, it will be double pound and the table name. And once you create a temp table, whatever operation you can perform on the table. If you create an index, you can create an index on the temp table also. If you can add a column on the table, then that column you can add on the temp table also. So, okay, so that you can perform all the things that you are going to perform on the table. If you want to delete the table, you can delete the temp table also. That all things you can do. Now we will see one thing. Now my scenario. Let's say I have tables. Create table. Table, I got just ID. Let's say I got ID. See a TID, I'll just give temp table as TID, and just I'll give some ID column. And I'm showing example. Okay, so execute. The table has been created. Now I'll just insert a value. Insert into TID. I'll just give values 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, okay. So I inserted some values into the table. Now when I select the table, now select star from TID, then what happens? I'll get the records. Now say me, I want to delete all the duplicate records and keep only the distinct records in the table. How can I do? Can anyone say that? I want to delete all the duplicates here. There are many ways. You can say whatever way you know. Hello? Yeah, can anyone say this? Yeah, Likita, I think you are right. Sorry, Monica or Likita? I can't hear you. Who is this?
Union.
So, yeah, union, how can you do?
Basket.
Yeah.
Can Likita, can we use union?
Yeah, how you are going to use union? Because it is from the same table, right?
Oh, it's the same. Yeah.
In the same table?
ID?
Huh?
Unique ID?
Not unique, you use a distinct.
Distinct. Okay.
Distinct. When you use a distinct ID, you will get only the distinct records. But I want to delete all the duplicate records from the table. Okay? When you use a distinct, you are getting the distinct records only. But in the table, the data is there. The original data is normally the original data is not affected. 1 to 1 to duplicate records. But when you do the distinct, you are getting only duplicate. You are getting only the normal record. Right? How to do them? That is the thing I want to know.
Delete ID which is not equal to distinct ID. Can we use that?
Distinct means you will get all the ID, right? So you just think of this. I'll get all the records. So if you delete, so the above one is a distinct and below one is a duplicates, right? My scenario is that I want, so instead of 1 2 times repeating, I want to store, I want a 1 to be only one time in the table. That's what I'm asking. If you delete one, the both records will be deleted. You can't delete only one record. If you give delete from table name where id equal to 1, it will delete 2, but you can't delete only one record. You can't give any condition there, right? So for this purpose, I'll use a concept called temp table. What I will do, first I'll create a temp table. Create table, same like table structure, but since it is a temp table, just you give pound symbol, and I'll write it as temp tid. Okay.
Can we delete only using temp, or can we write any other syntax?
Yeah, there are many things. But there are many ways to do, but I am explaining what is the use of temp table. I am giving you example, that's it. So I'll give id as integer. You can use CTs, like there are many ways to there are many approaches. So this is a temp table which I have, but this is also one type of best approach. Nothing, it is not a bad thing, it is also best approach. So this is a temp table I am having now. So when I create a temp table, the table is created on which database? Test database. But when I refresh it, I can't see the table name here. The pound temp id, you can't see the table name here. Okay, that you can't see the table name anywhere. Now, but the table is there. If I do a select star from temp tid, the same thing I'll be getting that id. See, I'll be getting, but it is not stored in the database. I'll say about that where it is stored. I'll be getting that id, the column name. What I will do, inside the temp table, I'll insert the distinct values from the tid. So how to insert the distinct values from the CID? Just write insert into temp table TID. Not only in the temp table, you can insert this into the anyone. I want to insert into ID. I can give the column names. By default, temp table has only one column. I'll just give that. So instead of giving the values, normally what we do, we'll give values and we'll write the values here, right? So instead of that, I'll just directly paste this select query. So whatever the output I got here, I am getting ID. That ID value will be inserted into the temp table. See now, that's it. It will be inserted. Now, if this is a one way of inserting, you will be using this one lot of. Okay. If I do select star from temp ID, see, automatically I will be getting that all the records, only the distinct records. Now the distinct records are stored in the temp ID. So after that, what I will do, I'll just truncate the table. Truncate table. Which table? The old table. That is a TID. I'll truncate the table. After truncating, now I'll insert the insert into the TID from the temp table. Select ID from temp TID. So are you able to get this? Now I'll truncate. So the data is not there. So now after inserting the temp table, that data will be inserted. Now you can see in the TID. Instead of getting the duplicate records, you will have the distinct records. So what I did here, first I loaded the data, or I loaded only distinct data from the distinct. First step I did is that loaded distinct data into a temp table. Or else I'll show in a normal structure, then that will be good. So what things I did, this is a main data, right? Main data, and I have created one temp table. So what I did, I loaded all the distinct data into the main data. So distinct data into the temp table, and after loading them into the temp table, I cleared all the table. I deleted the data into the main table, and after that again I loaded back the temp data into the main table. That's what I did. Are you able to get this point? So here the concept of temp table is nothing but you can use the temp table for storing the values temporarily. but the temp table will not be here. See, actually I got the temp table here, okay, but the temp table, I can do anything on the temp table. I can add a column, I can create index on the temp table, I can do that. See, even I do select star from, I can do. And on which database the TempDB I have created? It is on the test database, but you can't see the database on the tables. So normally whenever you create a temp table, as I said, for storing all the temporary values, system will, it uses the system databases TempDB. Now if I go and see in the temp database, okay, sorry, in the TempDB, if I go and see the temporary tables, now I'll get the temp database name. See, it is a temp TID. Don't worry about the dash, you will be getting the dash, it is by default. So it is, you can see here, pound temp ID, temp TID. See, you can see the exact temporary table here. That is in the TempDB. Even though you create your database here, but you can see the database in the TempDB. Okay, that is the use of the TempDB. And one more thing, I got this select star from TempDB, right? So now you got understand. Yeah, you can use a temp table for the storing some temporary values. That is the only concept you need to understand. Now if I open the other query, and even that query I connected to the test, and if I do select star from temp ID, it will not work. The temp table is only permanent, only you can see the temp table only for this window, not in the other window. You can't access the temp table. You can only access the temp table only for that window. Now you might be asking, so if I want to access the temp table in other one, then what you are going to do? So this single pound is nothing but it is a local temp table. If I use the same temp table with a double pound, and I'll give temp table as G means global. If I give double pound, then that temp table I can call it anywhere, execute it. So the table is created. I'll just Control C. I'll go to this window, and I'll just call it select star from. If I use this, see, you can see that ID means it is working, but here when you run, it will say that that object doesn't exist. Okay, so this is different between the temp table and the global variable. Now I'll just copy and paste you this query. It is not order by way, but you can just have a look at that. Sorry. So if I close this, so automatically the temp table and global table both will be deleted. Now if I refresh this, see, it will not be there, because it will be there only until the scope where you created. If that scope exists, then it will be, you can use that until that scope exists. If you delete that scope, then you can't see that. Okay, now in the temp table also, temp database, if I go and see in the temp table, actually I didn't refresh the tables, right? I'll just refresh it. Now you see, you can't see that table name again. So only it will be until only that for that window. When you close that, it will be removed. Even with the global variables also, global temp table also, that all the temp table will be stored here. That is the difference between the temp table and the global temp table, local temp table and the global temp table. And why you use the temp table? Use the temp table stores some values temporarily, and the temp table value, basically the temp table will be stored in the system database in the TempDB database. The system databases, TempDB system databases, the temp table, all the temp tables will be stored in the TempDB system databases. That is with the temp tables. Now we got one more concept called variables. What is variable means? See, what is the temp table? Temp table is storing the value for only time being. It is storing all the records. If you want to store certain value into the variable, and if you want to use some value again and again, or if you want to store certain value, let's say I got select ID from TID table. Oh, I just have connected TempDB, right? I'll connect to test. Now when I do, so I'll got the ID. Now my scenario is that I want to store the max ID and min ID, and I want to print. So what I will do now, I'll just declare two variables. Declare ID at the rate of, always the temp tables will be having the pound symbol, but at the variables you will have the a single, that's it, id as integer. Next I'll write this as a min id. Next I will add max id. Max id also integer, that's it. Now I am going to assign values. So this is a table, this is a name which you are going to give. The always it should start with a prefix with @ and whatever name you want you can give. And after this is a data type. If I want integer, if I want to have the varchar, I can give the varchar. Now normally I say we covered the data types, right? So whatever the data type you want, you can give the data type to here. If you want to give varchar, you can give. If you want to give a character, you can give. Just instead of integer, you can write character. If you want to give a date time, just give date time. Okay, like that. So this is, and I'll give one more thing called date time, or @ of today's date. Or I'll just write teacher @ of today's date. I'll just give td as date time. Now I'll assign values to each. First I'll assign to date time. Select set @ of td equal to get date. So the td value will be assigned. And now what I want to assign the minimum value of this id to this min id and max value to this max id. So I'll write a condition here. I'll write min id, min of that id as a tid. The same thing I'll write with the max. So max. So let's check the values. The minimum value is 1, max is 6, right? So we'll set. First one is the minimum value and max is a 6. Done. Now we'll assign the value. So basically we have seen the values only this one, right? Now I'll give the value @ of min id, assigning values to this. Normally you can assign this way, you can also assign value directly from the query. Bracket open, v and bracket close. Automatically that value will be assigned. This is a one way. Or here only directly you can write that column name @ of min id equal to. This is also, both will work. I'll just comment it this one. Now I'll just copy this, because the max it is the same thing, right? I'll paste it here. I'll write it here as max. Here I'll write max. The same thing here also. Okay. So this is the thing that okay, sorry, it is max, right? Max, done. Okay, this is the thing. So what I'll just print that value. Print @ of max id, and I'll write print @ of min id. So now both max id and min id will be printed. Now you can see. Declare, I'll select here. See. Max id is 6 and min id is 1. Now instead of using this, I'll just comment this code. Instead of using it, I'll just use this one. I'll just comment it. Means you are assigning the values to that variables right here. So I'll just do it now. Now also you'll get the same thing. Both are same. So these are the two ways how you are going create a variable, and after that I'll create a date also. Print @ of td. It will print the today's date. Okay, this is the way. Or else you can give by default, instead of giving here set value, you can give the values at the declaration get date. Then also it will work. Okay, see now, see, then also it works. This is the way how you are going to do. Okay, so we are created the variable and we assign the values to the variable. Let's say I can assign only one value to the variable, but now if I want to assign multiple values, select star from, what is the table name? So this is the one concept, and this is the other concept. Okay, I'll declare one more variable here. So in order to separate the concept. So this is I am keeping some comments here. I declare one more, declare id as integer. Okay, declare id as integer, and now I'll store the value. Set id equal to, I want to store all the IDs. Select id from, what is the table name? The table name is tid. This is the thing I am doing, so I'll just keep in the bracket. Now when I execute this query, previously we are assigned only one value, right? Now if I want to assign multiple values, like we are getting 6 values, now if I want to assign 6 values, see why it is not unable to assign. Oh, sorry, I am not given it at the rate, right? I should give at the rate. So can anyone say it will execute or it will give an error? Hello? I am saying that it will execute or it will not execute. Can anyone say? Hello?
Yeah, I've never tried it, Bhaskar.
I'll execute it. See why it is not showing? Because that subquery returns more than one value. Subquery means this value, but you can store only one value into the variable, right? Okay, you can't store multiple values in the variable. So the thing what you are going to do, whenever you want to store multiple values in the variable, you can't, there is one more data type which was introduced later on. Instead of the int, you can give the data type as table, close. In the other data types, there is a data type called table also. I don't know whether it is there here or not. Data types, somewhere in the other data types are the, yeah, see in the other data types you got one more called table data type. See, okay, data types, in the other data types you got type called table. That is nothing but this is a thing, table, and same as create table only, but you will give declare id, the table type, and you will give id as integer. That's it. And here after this, now it will assign same as a table only. Same thing you can insert into at the rate of id, and when I do this, that id will be inserted. Now I can do select. I'll just remove bracket. Now I'll write select star from id, and see now. See, it's working. Means you can create a variable in the table format also, and that same variable, see, even it is a variable, I am using same insert into, I will give table name, right? This variable is a table type, so I directly given that variable name. And normally what we do, select star from table name, right? I call it as variable id, same that we did as a temp table. For the temp table we did the same thing, right? So this is the thing, you can use a variable also as a table way, but when you declare it as a table type, then only you can use, you can insert multiple columns also by declaring with the multiple columns. If you want to store as a name, then you can give name and you can give the data type. Okay, I have given, but here what I will do, I will just store only the id, even though I created table with the name. Okay, but I will just store id only. Now see, when I execute this, I will get name as null because I have not insert any name, so I will get name as null. So this is the thing. But now you might get a doubt. Temp table also you can insert the values, and the table variable, this I will call this as a table variable of table type, variable of table type. This is a variable and the type is table. Normally we give integer variable name, after that we will give the integer type, right? As we did here. The same way, instead of the type, there is one more type called table. Okay, this is a data type. So after giving the table, you will give the column name. So now, so we store the values in the temp table. I think I mailed you that one query, right? The same query I'll copy here now. The same thing, instead of the temp table you can use the same thing by using the variable. Whatever the query you got, the same query you can do by using the temp table also. Sorry, by using the table variable. Let's check that one. The same thing. I'll just go here. I'll just go to the new window. Control V. So I'll just declare the variable here. Declare this ID. So already we inserted the values, so nothing to worry about this. We have created the table, right? And instead of temp table, what I'll do, I'll just remove this one. I'll just create this variable, declare, and I'll just give ID. The same thing, whatever we did instead of the temp table, I'll just have the ID. That's it, integer. So wherever I got the temp table, I'll just copy this and I'll have this variable name. See, if I do this, then also it will work. Yeah, after select star from ID, because we don't have any records, so after that you can see the messages here. You'll get all the records. Now if I do the select star from, you'll get 5 records. Oh sorry, it will be gone immediately. It will be gone. You can't see that one again, so I'll write it here, select star from ID. Or else now you can see the table normally. Select star from I'll give here at the rate of ID. Now I'll execute this. See, I'll get the records. So this the first select will execute. So in the first select it will return 0 records. You can see in the message 0 records. After that you are inserting 5 values. So 5 records you are inserted. After that you are truncating 5 records. Right? So truncated, it will not show anything. It will not show any records. Insert, you are inserting 5 records. After inserting, you are again doing a select command, 5 records. That's the thing. Okay? So the same thing you can do is a variable. But there is a difference between variable and when to use a variable and when to use a temp table. I'm going to explain them now. Please be careful, they will ask you this one. So let's say I got a variable. This is a temp table. Okay? Table. This is a variable table. I'll just give @ table, means variable table. So the temp table, the first thing what will see, the temp table will be stored in the tempdb, but table variable will use our system memory. And one more thing, on the table variable, once you create a table variable, you can alter the temp table. So once you create a temp table, you can alter the temp table, like you can add additional columns. But I'll try to alter this one. Alter table. Alter is used for only table, but this is a variable. Can you use alter for this variable? No. Right? So you can't alter the table variable. But you can alter the temp table. You can alter a temp table, you can add indexes to a temp table, but variable you can't do. And see, variable you can add 5 primary key constraints, but to the variable you can't add the, like I'll go here, you can't use alter command, on you can use alter command, you can't use alter command, no alter command, or else we'll try now, you will be confirmed, right? So I'll go to the temp table here, I'll just alter one structure to the temp table here. So alter table, and what is the table name? I'll give @ID, and I'll give add column. Add, what is the column name? I'll give name as varchar of 10. Now see, incorrect syntax at the ID. When I click this one, it will highlight that row number. See, because you can't alter the temp table. It's a table variable, but you can alter the temp table. Okay? And after that, in the temp table, the data is stored by same as a table way. Same as a table format, the data is stored. But in the table variable, the entire data is stored as a single record. Okay, entire data is stored as a single record. We can see it now. This is a temp table. I'll just use where. You can use where condition also. One. We'll see now. Okay. See, when I use a where condition, what it is saying, it is showing an error. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. It will show. It will not show any error. It will get. You will get the ID now. Okay. You can use same as a where condition, but at the back end, it is not stored as the same as a table. It will use a different storage method. Okay. And one more thing with the temp table, you can create a primary key, that is you can create entity constraints, but you can't create a domain constraints. Okay, domain and differential you can't create. I don't know with the differential, but you can't create a domain constraint, that is a check and that all. Sorry, you can create domain constraint, you can create all constraints on the temp table. Here on the table variable you can create only domain constraints. Okay, you can create only domain sorry, please forgive me. On the temp table you can create all constraints. On the table variable you cannot create the domain constraints. Domain constraints means check, default, that all constraints you can't create on the table variable. And when you add less data, temp table will be slow, as per the normal thing, but table variable will be fast, because temp table uses a temp db. Because of that it will be slow. Since the table variable uses a system memory, so because of that the table variable will be fast. If you don't, if you want to store the records only temporarily, just you can use table variable only. But if you want to store the records and if you want to create an index on the records, then better to use a table variable, so temp table. Okay, these are the major difference between the table variable and the temp table. So normally if you just want to store the records and if you want to use the records later on, in my scenario, the scenario that we did, like storing the records and deleting the records, right? Here in this scenario I'll just use table variable only. I'll not use a temp table, because table variable will be fast. But if there is a scenario where I want to store millions of records, so my scenario is that I want to store millions of records into one temp table. I'll write this one, temp table. And after that I want to join this temp table with another main table. So here I'll be using temp table only, because on the temp table I'll create a temp table and I can create indexes on the temp table. So when the indexes are there, then when you join it will be easy, because we are inserting some millions of records. But if you use a table variable here at the rate of table, then you can't create any index. So that's why it will be slow, because you can't modify it, right? So in this scenario I'll just use a table variable, so temp table. Okay, so when there is a millions of records and if you want to add some columns after that, and if you want to create index on that, then in that scenario you can use a temp table. But if you want to just load the data and if you want to store the data, then you can use a table, this one. Okay, table variable. So this is the normal difference. That is like this is an interview question, definitely they will ask many times. Are you okay with this? Hello?
Bhaskar, can we join the temporary table with the other tables?
Temporary table, you can use a temporary